Welcome to the Horror Story channel, where nightmares come to life. Join us for spine-chilling stories of terror, creepy urban legends, and haunted places. If you're brave enough to face your deepest fears, hit the subscribe button for our latest horror stories. Without any delay, let's jump right into the story. The plague infection. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long, twisted shadows that sprawled like dark fingers across the crumbling streets. Sarah gripped her makeshift weapon, a length of pipe wrapped in duct tape, tighter as she led her brother Danny through the eerie silence of the once bustling city. It was a world now haunted by death and decay, and every broken window and desolate storefront reminded them of what they had lost. "I can't believe it's been a year since it all started," Danny whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind that whistled through the empty streets. Sarah glanced back at her brother, her eyes a mix of determination and concern. "We'll find a cure, Danny. I promise," she replied, her voice strong despite the gnawing dread in her gut. "We have to find a cure, for Danny's sake and for everyone else's," she thought. As they continued their search for supplies, Sarah couldn't help but feel the weight of the past bearing down on her. The ghostly streets seemed to whisper stories of the life that had once thrived there. The city had been a place of laughter, love, and hope, but now it was a somber monument to humanity's downfall. Entering a dilapidated convenience store, Sarah and Danny carefully picked through the debris, their eyes scanning for anything that might be of use. Every so often, Danny would glance up at his sister, admiration shining in his eyes. "She's so brave," he thought. "I don't know how she does it." As they rummaged through the remnants of the store, a sudden noise outside made Sarah's heart leap into her throat. She exchanged a tense look with Danny, who nodded in understanding. They both knew that the world outside was now teeming with unseen dangers. "Stay here," Sarah whispered, her grip tightening on the pipe. She cautiously approached the door, her senses on high alert. "It could be an infected or another survivor," she mused, "but I have to know." As she peered around the shattered glass, she saw a figure in the distance. The person appeared to be human, but with the way the shadows played tricks on the eyes, it was impossible to be sure. As the figure drew closer, Sarah could see it was a man with a wild beard, and he was not alone. A small group of people, armed and wary, followed closely behind him. The man noticed Sarah and raised a hand in greeting. "Hello there," he called out, his voice weary but friendly. "My name's Thomas. We mean you no harm." Sarah lowered her pipe and breathed a sigh of relief. They might not be a cure, but they were a glimmer of hope in this desolate city, a reminder that they weren't alone in their struggle. As Thomas and his group approached, Sarah felt a flicker of optimism ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, they would be the key to turning the tide in their desperate search for a cure. And together, they could begin to mend their broken world. "We'll find a way to survive," she thought, her resolve strengthening. "No matter what it takes." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the decaying cityscape. Sarah led Danny and the others through the labyrinth of deserted streets, her eyes dotting back and forth, always on the lookout for danger. In this world, it was a matter of when, not if, trouble would find them. As they approached an old convenience store, Thomas motioned for the group to take a break. With weary sighs, they lowered their heavy bags to the cracked pavement. Sarah watched as Thomas scouted the perimeter, ensuring their temporary safety. She couldn't help but admire the man's unwavering determination. In these dark times, it was rare to find someone who still had the will to fight. "Hey, Sarah," Danny whispered, pulling her from her thoughts. "Do you really think this Dr. Kane has the cure?" She looked at her brother, his eyes wide with a mix of hope and fear. "I don't know, Danny, but we have to try, right?" Danny nodded, his gaze drifting to the ground. "Yeah, I just wish things could go back to the way they were before all this." Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand. "Me too, kiddo. But we have to keep moving forward." As the group prepared to resume their journey, they were suddenly ambushed by a group of hostile survivors. Weapons drawn, they demanded the group's supplies, their eyes full of desperation and hunger. In the face of danger, Sarah's instincts took over. She raised her hands, showing she was unarmed, and tried to reason with their attackers. "We don't want any trouble," she said, her voice calm but firm. "There's enough pain and suffering in this world without us adding to it." The leader of the hostile group, a man with a grizzled beard and a nasty scar across his cheek, sneered at her words. "You think your pretty words will save you?" Before Sarah could respond, Thomas stepped forward. "We're searching for a cure," he explained, his voice steady. "If we work together, we have a better chance of survival. Isn't that worth more than a few supplies?" The leader hesitated, his eyes flicking back and forth between Sarah and Thomas. In the end, the prospect of a cure won out over his greed. With a begrudging nod, he agreed to a temporary alliance, and the two groups merged, their shared goal forming a tenuous bond between them. In the days that followed, they faced numerous challenges navigating the treacherous city, fending off infected hordes, and scavenging for dwindling resources. Through it all, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the way Thomas brought out the best in people, even in the darkest of times. One evening, as the group huddled around a small campfire, Danny revealed his newfound talent for hacking. He had managed to access a secure database, discovering valuable information about Dr. Kane's fortified research facility hidden deep within the quarantine zone. Sarah couldn't suppress a smile as she watched her brother's excitement. Despite the odds stacked against them, Danny's tenacity and intelligence shone like a beacon of hope. The group's spirits lifted, and for the first time in a long while, they dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could reclaim their world from the darkness. Under the cover of darkness, Sarah and her group approached Dr. Kane's fortified research facility. The dilapidated structure loomed ominously against the night sky, its shattered windows like empty eye sockets. As the wind howled through the broken panes, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this was their only chance to find the cure and save what was left of humanity. "What if we're too late?" Danny whispered, his voice trembling with fear. "We can't think like that," Sarah replied, her tone determined. "We have to believe that we can make a difference." As they crept closer to the facility, Thomas signaled for everyone to stop. He pointed to a hidden entrance near the back of the building. "This is our way in," he said, his eyes dotting between the members of his group. "But remember, this place is dangerous. Stay alert and be ready for anything." Sarah couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt as they entered the dark, claustrophobic tunnel leading into the heart of the research facility. In her mind, she wondered, what if this is a trap? What if Dr. Kane is waiting for us? But she pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. Inside the facility, the eerie silence was punctuated by distant echoes of machinery and the faint, desperate cries of the infected. As they cautiously made their way through the dimly lit corridors, the group discovered evidence of horrific experiments, mangled corpses, blood-stained instruments, and rooms filled with sinister devices. "This man is a monster," Sarah muttered under her breath as they entered a chamber filled with rows of glass containers, each housing a grotesque, mutated version of the virus. It was then that they stumbled upon a hidden laboratory where Dr. Kane himself was hard at work. His gaunt figure was hunched over a workstation, his face illuminated by the cold, blue glow of computer screens. Sarah felt her blood run cold as she realized the true extent of his twisted ambitions. "Look at this," Danny said, pointing to a series of schematics on a nearby table. "He's trying to weaponize the virus, to control the infected and use them as an army." The group exchanged horrified glances, the weight of their discovery settling upon them. They knew they had to stop Dr. Kane, no matter the cost. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Dr. Kane," she called out, "we know what you're doing, and we won't let you go through with it." The scientist turned slowly to face her, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "Ah, my uninvited guests," he said with mock politeness. "I must commend you on your resourcefulness. But I'm afraid you've walked right into my trap." As he spoke, the doors to the laboratory slammed shut, trapping the group inside. Dr. Kane's twisted laughter echoed through the chamber as Sarah realized the true danger they were in. With renewed resolve, she vowed to find a way to outwit Dr. Kane and save her group, knowing that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stared into the cold, calculating eyes of Dr. Kane. The twisted man grinned, revealing the full extent of his trap. She glanced at her brother Danny, who returned a look of unwavering determination. She knew they had to act fast, or they would become mere pawns in Dr. Kane's diabolical game. Dr. Kane's voice echoed in the sterile chamber. "You think you can outsmart me, Miss Thompson? I've been planning this for years. You and your pathetic little band of survivors are no match for me." Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way to outwit the cunning scientist. Her eyes dotted around the room, taking in every detail, seeking an opportunity. She noticed a panel on the wall displaying a complex network of wires and tubes that powered the facility. "Sarah, look," Danny whispered urgently, gesturing toward the panel. "I think I can hack into the system and cause a chain reaction. We might be able to shut down the entire facility." Sarah nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Do it, Danny. I'll keep him occupied." She turned back to Dr. Kane, a steely defiance in her gaze. "You underestimate us, Dr. Kane. You might have your twisted intellect, but you lack the one thing that truly matters: humanity." Dr. Kane scoffed. "Humanity? It's humanity that brought us to this point, Miss Thompson. It's humanity that created this virus and destroyed our world." As they argued, Danny crept toward the panel, his nimble fingers working their way through the tangled wires. He navigated the facility's security measures with ease, his mind focused on the task at hand. Sarah continued to engage Dr. Kane in their heated debate, distracting him from Danny's progress. She spoke of the strength and resilience of the human spirit, drawing from her own experiences and the sacrifices made by Thomas and the other survivors. Meanwhile, Alarms began to blare throughout the facility as Danny's hacking set off a chain reaction. The sterile chamber filled with a cacophony of warning sirens and flashing red lights. The ground beneath them trembled, threatening to give way at any moment. Dr. Kane's eyes widened with disbelief, his confident demeanor crumbling. You've ruined everything," he hissed, lunging towards Sarah. With swift reflexes, she sidestepped his attack and pushed him to the ground. "It's over, Kane. You won't hurt anyone else." As the facility began to collapse around them, Sarah, Danny, and the remaining survivors raced through the labyrinth of corridors, dodging falling debris and navigating their way to the exit. Their hearts ached for the friends they'd lost along the way, but they knew there was no time for grief. Not yet. Finally, they emerged from the crumbling building, the once imposing structure reduced to a smoldering heap of rubble. As they caught their breath, they looked to one another, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over them. With Dr. Kane's plans in ruins and the evidence of his twisted experiments exposed to the world, the group of survivors knew that they still had a long road ahead in their search for a cure. But they held on to the hope that, with their resilience and determination, they would overcome the challenges that awaited them in this dark and unforgiving world. The cold wind whipped around Sarah and Danny as they stood atop a crumbling rooftop, gazing at the horizon. The sun dipped below the skeletal remains of once great skyscrapers, casting a blood-red hue across the sky. Danny stared in awe at the eerie beauty, while Sarah clenched her fists, her resolve hardened. In the days following their narrow escape, the world had changed. Danny's skills had exposed the dark truth behind Dr. Kane's twisted intentions, and the remnants of humanity were uniting against their common enemy. Hope, once a scarce commodity, now flickered in the hearts of the survivors like a candle struggling to stay alight amidst a storm. "I can't believe we actually did it," Danny said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder and looked into his eyes. "I know it will," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. "We've shown everyone that we can fight back. It won't be easy, but we can't let people like Dr. Kane control our destiny." As they spoke, a radio message crackled to life, and Thomas' voice reached their ears. "Sarah, Danny, we've received word of a potential lead on the cure. We need to regroup and plan our next move." Sarah exchanged glances with her brother. They knew this was the beginning of a new chapter in their journey, one filled with peril and uncertainty. But they also knew that they couldn't afford to let fear hold them back. Danny's thoughts turned to the sacrifices they'd made along the way. He couldn't help but think of the friends they'd lost, their lives given to bring them to this pivotal moment. "I just wish they could be here with us," he murmured, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah wrapped her arm around him, drawing him close. "They are with us in spirit, Danny. We carry their memories with us, and we'll honor them by continuing to fight. This world may be dark and unforgiving, but we'll keep pushing forward, together." As the sun vanished beneath the horizon, Sarah and Danny descended from the rooftop, their shadows melding with the darkness that enveloped the city. The night was cold and full of terrors, but they were no longer the same frightened souls who'd first stepped into this desolate world. They had seen the face of evil, and they had refused to be consumed by it. They had found strength in each other and in the bonds they'd formed with fellow survivors. And now, they would continue their quest for a cure, a beacon of hope in a world of shadows. For Sarah and Danny, The darkness was no longer an abyss to be feared, but rather a challenge to be met. With every step they took, every battle they fought, they would bring light to the darkness, illuminating a path to a brighter future. And as they walked side by side, they knew in their hearts that hope, once kindled, could never truly be extinguished. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching my horror story videos. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment below to let me know what you thought. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Your support helps the channel grow and allows me to keep creating new content. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the next video.